one, camera two.
That only
camera
took
one,
forever. Yeah.
Camera two. Camera one.
Okay. So, energy. Up. Gumbolaya podcast. C.A. Purcell here with my beautiful. This person, her name is Praise and Production. So
shout out to Jason who goes like this.
Yo,
that was for you.
I'm so sorry I cut you off.
It's okay.
My bad. But I looked at the clock. We were at 37 minutes.
Can I admit something to the audience? So, like we said in the last episode, I was nervous.
She was hella nervous. You was scared.
I don't know if I want to do a podcast.
And I'm like, you nervous to talk to me?
Well, and I just sometimes feel like, I don't know if I have a lot to say or whatever. And he did point out
definitely
to me
had a lot to say, didn't she? That wasn't a problem.
He makes it easy, my babe. So thank you for having me.
I mean, talking is easy. It's just being brave enough to say something real.
Yeah.
That is a challenge. Yeah. We could talk about that because you are champion authenticity.
Well, wait, we were talking about music and business.
We totally were. We can totally get back to it. Did you write it down?
I did.
Well, we'll get back to it.
Well, I did.
You want to continue talking about business?
Yes.
All right. That's fine.
Well, actually, we can come back to vulnerability.
Sure.
I mean, this is vulnerable too, okay? But
is it though?
Yes.
But is it economics major?
That was exactly the point I was going to make.
Go ahead. Go for it.
Was you were talking about how, as a musician, you didn't really pay attention to the business side.
Yeah.
And I think I made a bit of the almost opposite mistake because I was so strong in what I had studied and, all that stuff. Going through that transition, like I was talking about in the last episode, college, and realizing that I really love the art and I really love music. And then, okay, how do I make a living at this, right? I think that I was in a band and I was performing, but I think my subconscious was feeling like the strength I was bringing to the band was like my ability to administrate and to be organized and to handle business. And, I was our de facto publicist and I ran our email list and all of that is important.
Yeah.
But you mentioned a quote that I was going to bring up in this context, which was another friend of mine outside of the band was very encouraging to me at the time. And he was like, look, Kelley, you've got to sing. Like that's the core of your soul. And, artists are always going to try to figure out how to be heard and what to do to market themselves the best way and promote themselves the best way. But if you get too caught up in that and you lose the soul part of it, it's a real problem. And that's what I've struggled with. So they're vulnerable. Yeah.
Well, the reason that struck me in the moment when we started talking about authenticity, I can't remember how it came to mind just now, but I because I know the journey that you've been on since I met you, and because in my opinion, you've grown a lot in that area, even though you still feel like it's a struggle. I've kind of seen your arc and I've seen you go from, I've seen you go from having a lot of anxiety and stress in moments where you're trying to find the pleasant way to be honest about something that, you know what I mean, that might strike somebody a bit harshly or whatever, which, is a part of just being a considerate person or whatever, into someone who does not have much trouble being like, I don't like that.
Really?
Well, I mean, I'm exaggerating.
You're my husband. I feel like I do that.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, because when we first started dating, it was smiles and giggles. And then after a while, it's like, I don't like that. I don't want to do that.
Well, if you live with someone long enough, you do have to learn how to keep it real. But I apologize if I ever hurt your feelings. I mean, we've been together a long time.
Hurt my feelings? When have you ever hurt my feelings? Are you kidding me?
I don't know what you are talking about.
I don't know what you were talking about. But my point more so was just I've seen the arc personally, as well as I've seen the difference when you're in what to you feels like stressful social situations, and I've seen the differences in how graceful and how I want to say confident, but I've never felt like you weren't confident. I think when I met you, it seemed like you struggled to feel confident, even though you were able to project confidence.
Fake it till you make it kind of thing.
Right, yeah. Which is different.
Yeah.
And now I feel like you're so much better at realizing your own strength in those moments where you don't feel as pressured to conform to outside expectations.
Thank you.
You know what I mean? I know it's still a struggle.
Been working on it.
Yeah, I know it's still a struggle. So speak on that. Like when you kind of think about, high school, college, the formative years, right? To now, what's made a difference for you in that area? Like what have you found that you use as a tool to strengthen your resolve towards it's okay for me to speak up. It's okay for me to be honest if I don't agree with the status quo. Where does it come from? What have you found? What have you learned? What have you been eating?
You're such a good interviewer. It's a great question. And, you said from high school to college to now, and I feel like it's been in the last 2 years.
Okay, fair enough.
Maybe or exponential growth in it.
What do you think started it? Like what happened 2 years ago that kind of, started the ripples in the lake?
I really don't think it's something very, very specific I can point to. It's just, I have to take it back to the Lord. I have to take it back to just getting more and more grounded in who I am in Christ. And, that requires prayer and meditation. It requires reading and remembering the word all the time. And so I'm slowly thinking because I'm trying to think if there was like kind of one specific turning point.
Well, what makes you feel like 2 years was a turning point? Like you said, the last 2 years, you felt exponential growth in that area.
Yeah. So there was this poem that came to me.
You want to share it?
Okay, I don't know if I have it fully memorized, but let me just give the...
Maybe next segment.
Sure.
Should you choose to.
Sure.
Yeah.
This poem that came to me, it was during COVID, during like the height of our lockdown. So we went into lockdown 2020 and it's called The Reason.
Yeah.
And as you know, and I will share vulnerably, that...
Sorry. Go ahead. Vulnerably.
Thanks for laughing at my vulnerability.
I'm sorry.
I'm kidding.
Marriage. I'm going to do my best to be vulnerable. You're sensitive. You have feelings.
We laugh a lot in the Purcell household. Okay.
Yeah.
So I've struggled a lot with both sides of that personality of mine. I am both an artist and I am an entrepreneur and a businesswoman. And I actually do really enjoy both. And the world wants to make you choose, right? Especially
because you're strong in both.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And it's hard for me to embrace that.
Yeah.
Because the world wants you to choose a lane, especially America, right? Yeah. Like you want to make a living at something, you better choose a lane and do that thing. I have struggled with that so hard because I like both. You
think it's the world that wants that? Why do you feel like it's the world?
Well, let's talk about capitalism, right? So capitalism is all about, in its purest form, it's an exchange of goods and services. And you know me, I think in its pure form, it's fine.
We have very different views on capitalism.
But what I try to say to people is, in its pure form, you get good at something, it's specialization, right? And so we decide that, okay, great, you're good at that, I'm good at this. And then I'll give you something to get what you're good at, and you give me something to get what I'm good at. And that way we can save our resources, right? In its purest form, it's just a way of organizing. In the hands of human beings who are not perfect and completely flawed, every system that we try to create for ourselves, to organize, to control, and to dominate gets problematic because we are greedy, we are selfish. Every system is fearful. We have a scarcity mindset. So whether it's capitalism or communism or any system we try to create, feudalism back in the day.
I still think we're in feudalism. We can talk about this some other time. That might be a little too deep for Gumbolaya, but I don't
disagree with you.
Yeah, okay.
Where did slavery come from?
Yeah.
Greed.
Yeah.
Right? Like how do we churn out this product at a cheaper rate?
Right.
We're going to bring these humans over here as cattle. Like, that is the worst of capital, the worst, right? So it's unfortunate. And so my point was, and help me stay on track.
Sure. I'm not going to be able to help you do that. I'm a rambler. That's why I called it Rambling At. When it was just me.
I'm the one who helps us stay on track.
Yeah. We're talking about the sides, artist side, business side.
So you said the world. Yes, I do think it's the world. I think that in a capitalist society, when we're deciding who's going to get really good at a particular service and give it away for a price, and I mean, you could disagree with me if you want, but capitalism will tell you that you better get really good at that and you better focus on it. And that's what it means to become a professional at anything, right?
Fair enough.
If you want to get a realtor, you want the best realtor in town.
Right.
You want the person who you know has done 80 different deals and knows all the answers to all the questions.
Right.
And it's usually the person that focuses on it. So yes, I think that it is the world, because now you know how pastors have been taking us back to Genesis.
Yeah.
Where God actually created a world where we don't have to work that hard. We don't have to toil. It is what I've been getting out of that series.
Yeah.
And it's actually been quite enlightening for me, because we were the ones that, the enemy, and we partook of what the enemy offered, right? And that's what brought on a lot of hardship. But before that, God is saying, behold what I've given you.
Yeah.
I've given you this, the fruit of the seeds fruit of the seed. So we've made the world a lot harder to deal with and work in and toil in. And that's why there's economic inequality. That's why people go to bed hungry.
That makes sense to me. But I struggle with that concept, because to me, there is no alternative to the everything concept, the world concept, right? Because the world is people, right? So any idea
the alternative is God.
Right. But we're not doing business with God. We're doing business with each other. We're interacting with each other. And because we all have different cultural foundations for God, different experiences with each other and with God, there isn't a common connection of whatever it means to have integrity or righteousness or whatever. And one of the best examples I've ever heard about why capitalism results in fundamental struggle for people who don't already have. Capitalism is great
if you already
in its inception, because it was created by people with means.
I got you.
Right? As far as I know. But for people without means, you are always subject to the grace and the mercy of those with resources.
Yes.
And that's simply because we left.
But that's every system.
Right. Yeah. But that's what I'm saying. And when we be talking, you always want to talk about the purity of the system. And I'm like, there's no system that I've ever read about or heard about unless it is specifically rooted in one of the ancient belief systems.
I don't disagree with you, though.
But you do,
I don't think you're listening. So, marriage. So, yes, I talk about purity, but that is with the caveat that human beings are not pure.
Okay, so here, maybe this is a better way to ask
maybe it's fair to say there really is no purity.
Well, that's what I'm trying to say, because where do you get this idea that the concept was pure to begin with? From what I've learned about every social structure, every financial system ever, there's always the idea of either communal shared power, which tend to work better until resources are not equally shared and distributed. As soon as that
correct.
starts to happen, then you have the haves and you have the have-nots.
Yeah.
What I was trying to get to a moment ago was a very interesting, I told you a lot about how impactful my sociology studies were when I was
and I'm sorry, because you talk a lot. I just want to say, I'm not trying to defend capitalism.
Okay.
And I think that's how you see it when I say these things, because human beings, I'm sorry, y'all, because we're all human beings. We mess up everything. We mess up everything. So I just want to say that before you keep going.
That's okay.
And that's why I'm a big proponent of we need God.
Yeah.
Point blank.
Yeah.
Anytime we're trying to make our way in this world, we need God. So I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I just want to say that because he can talk.
I mean, that does make sense. And, I believe that. What has become a challenge for me to understand and kind of wrap my mind around is what I guess it's because I don't believe it's possible. However, I've spent a lot of time like reading and thinking about how we could all do better with some type of shared culture, which would include those who don't believe in God as we do.
Right.
Or who don't believe in God at all, right?
Sure.
Because we can't exclude anyone that would choose to be in the group,
You're
right?
absolutely right.
And we also can't force people to cater to our beliefs.
Yeah.
So if you think about government in any area, a benevolent government, if such exists, has to, hopefully puts their effort into finding common ground.
Yes.
So simple things like, and I'm going to try one more time to share the experience I had in the sociology class, which was very enlightening for me. So the professor's name is Dr. Frazier, and I just really enjoyed it because he made very, very big points and very simple statements that I had never thought about from the perspective of a community mindset. It was more so you and me and that, you know what I mean? I was much more individual minded. And one of the examples he gave, which put capitalism into a less negative perspective for me, was he was like, okay, let me explain to you why capitalism will always be a struggle for people who don't have. And he said, okay, he said, I have a kid and I need a babysitter. Who in this room would babysit my kid for $1,000 a night? Everybody's hand went up, right? Right? Yeah. He said, okay, now, who in this room would babysit my kid for $500 a night? A couple people's hand went down, but it's still most of the room. He was like, okay, who in this room would babysit my kid for $200 a night? Hands went down, a couple people's hands still up. And so he kept going until there was only one person's hand up. And he said, you're hired. And he said, now. He was like, that process was purely for my benefit.
Right.
Not for any of yours. Right. My goal is not to help you. Right. My goal is to get what I need.
Get a service from
for
someone
as little as possible.
Yes.
And so it still bothers me because my mind, and I know I'm a bit I've learned that I'm a bit naive in this area. My mind was formed from a community of people, my parents and the people I grew up around, where you don't ask for more than you're worth. And when I say you're worth, I mean, if I'm gonna cut somebody's grass and normal rate for cutting grass is $30, I want $30. I don't want 50 because it's not worth 50. I would like 50 if you choose, but I ask you for what's fair, and I expect you to give me what's fair, so that in the future, if you find out that other people is cutting grass for $30 and you remember that I asked for 50, you're going to look at me as a cheater, as a liar. You know what I mean?
Right. And man.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I love your sociology.
I don't know why I went high pitch right there, but I sure, go ahead. Go for it.
That's the...
Interject.
I like your high pitch. Anyway, I love your sociology teacher's example.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to go somewhere else because you're still in the realm of capitalism. When you say, the place where you're from, we're not going to ask for more than we're worth. And that's very trusting, right?
It felt more like bartering.
Well, so this is what I was trying to say.
Yeah.
So let's take it back a couple steps, maybe even before there was a thing called money, right? Where we're trying to create order in our society, in our system of people, in our groups of people, right? And so in that example, your sociology teacher needed someone to watch his kids. Well, back in the day, someone would just watch his kids because he knew that other person will that he'll cut the other person's grass. He's very good at that, right? And back in the day, before there was even money or even anything to use with barter, it was more of a community type of system where we kind of trusted each other to help each other out. And that's awesome. It's just when things of the enemy start to creep in, like greed or like, well, I don't feel like cutting his grass, but I still need him to watch my kids, it starts to break down. And so, I try to get, when I talk about systems starting in a pure place, I just try to give human beings, I wrote this down, the benefit of the doubt, right? Like we've always been trying to create order with the best of intentions. It's just those intentions
about all of us.
I'm trying to give people the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
That's all. But it quickly turns afoul. And that's really the issue.
Yeah.
Now, so again, I thought you were kind of going outside of the realm of capitalism when you were talking about being inclusive of others. I know that we live in a world where there's a lot of people who don't believe in God or who maybe believe in God in a different way than you and I do.
Right.
And we are called, we know, to love people, love people, even if you disagree, even if maybe your way of approaching God is different than this person's way, or this person's like, I don't know about this God. We're still going to love them. And so how do you create, and you said it really well, like how do you create a baseline? Because for me, God is that foundation. But if we need to live together in a society, and God made us diverse, and we know from pastors' teachings, diversity is a gift. We know that.
Right.
So how do you create a society where there's a baseline despite what different beliefs people may have?
Right.
That's really hard.
It is.
That's really hard. So that's what I mean when, systems of order that we've tried to cultivate are coming from the best of intentions of trying to make this all work.
Well, yeah, that's exactly what I mean when I say the reality I got hit with as I got older, because I paid attention to this stuff because I was working as a professional when I was still a child.
Right.
I started working, playing for ministries and needing to think with integrity, expecting the other person had integrity because they're an adult and I'm a child. So I'm thinking they're going to do right because they're an adult.
Right.
Why would you cheat a kid? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Especially when you're a kid, you don't,
you don't know.
Coming at it with a very pure sense of,
as I got older, the idea of established goodwill and good intentions, as will happen with everyone. I'm sorry, it's about to get very dark, but you learn that's not a given.
Yeah.
You want to recognize and cling to those that do have good intentions and that do regard you with honor and dignity and respect. Those are the people you want in your life.
Yeah.
Those are the people you want to deal with. Yeah. But you can't expect it because it is very common, especially when you start to get into the areas of high levels of gimme.
Yes.
As you get, that's what I'm saying. So that's what I was trying to explain is the connection between what we were talking about before, the idea of business often feeling negative to me, because the farther you get into the thick of an industry, when the zeros are added on, the harder it is for people to remember that if I do right by you, my life is better.
Yes.
Because if you look around, you see examples in the world where if I have the money over everything mentality, I end up with all this money, and it takes an arc of getting a lot to see that a lot
is not enough.
Not enough. It's not worth anything other than the money, right?
Yes.
So, I've been broke for a while. You know what I'm saying? I've had incredible seasons of drought.
Sure.
I've had seasons of harvest. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I've never been wealthy, but I've had several seasons where I had more money than I needed.
Right.
And you know me, my needs are not very high. Mm-hmm. Like I need to be able to eat. Yep. I want air condition. I want to be able to go to the hospital, right? I don't, you know what I'm saying?
Got to be the hospital.
And and I also want to be able to hook people up. Like if I go out to eat with friends, if somebody broke, I like having enough.
You do.
You know what I'm saying? It's a good feeling to be like, I'm not worried about that. I want to chill with you. If I buy you food, that's fine.
Yeah.
God give me money, I give you food, whatever.
Well, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. My point just was, man, I keep going in a high pitch. So my point was just more so because you felt it. We've talked about this before. I just don't know if we ever got to like the origin of, because I don't even know if I realized it like I do right now before now, but because my introduction into business concepts was as a child, and I was in the safety of my home with my parents, so I wasn't afraid.
Right.
I just started to see, the reality that what business means is some type of level or, some level of competition to see who can get the most out of this.
Yes.
And because I didn't think like that, my path or the path that I followed would lead me to people who were not looking to get and to take. Yes. It was much more like, we want to walk in this way together because we want to either do what we're doing, we want to build what we're building, or we enjoy the process of this relationship together, right? And then once all of the contracts and stuff had to come into the situation, it would just always get hard and complicated, and people start.
Yeah, I know. Well, that's where I want to jump in, because
barf.
I think it can be easy for any of us, myself included, and this has happened to me in the last week, to get discouraged when we have to grapple with the world. And that's what I was talking about in the last episode we were in. And okay, I think I have that answer you were asking me about the last 2 years and like exponential growth. Really actively letting go of anxieties, because God is the giver of all resources. And so there's so many things that would make me anxious. I mean, and this is an actively thing that I work on. I'm not 100, we're never going to be 100% there. But one of the things that would make me anxious is not having enough money. You know that, right? So I think about retirement. I think about getting older. I think about wanting to have
You do? You think about money? What? What? What is this?
I don't know what
my wife
about. I don't
stresses
know
about
what
money.
He's talking about.
What?
Anyway, God is the giver of all resources, including money. So that's one thing that would make me anxious. The other thing, when you're talking about it getting, as you get into contracts and working with people and all of that stuff, God says, be not unequally yoked. Yeah. You will know them by their fruit. Yeah. And one of the things that I've been learning in the last 2 years, and I think even exponentially in the last month, as I shared with you, is to slow down. Mm-hmm. My mind moves like this a lot. And sometimes that's good, but the strength can turn into a weakness. And I want to move forward. I'm ambitious. I want to get to the next thing, blah, blah, blah. And I've heard the Holy Spirit tell me to slow down. And you've helped me with this, And so when it comes to working with certain people or whatever, and you're just starting relationships, it's okay to take it slow. Yeah. Both emotionally, for those of you looking for partners out there, but then also in business, right? Because you get into business, that's a big deal with someone, and you want to trust them. So it's okay to slow down. Yeah. And we all get there. I shouldn't say we all. I will speak for myself. Get obsessed with getting the results, getting the accolade, being the best, getting to the money for what you're trying to do, and all of that stuff. And I think one of the other things that I've really had to work on letting go of this anxiety is, and I was talking about earlier, I have both sides of myself, and I've always thought I was needing to choose. And that has made me anxious, at times depressed. But, because I'm thinking I have to either be the best here or the best here, and that's it. And that's not true. I need God's help figuring that out, because the world doesn't really help me figure that out. But God can. So all that to say, I know it can be discouraging to look at the world's systems. And for you and I, again, we talked about wanting to get our music out there and get it out there further. But Pastor told me, he was like, look, you gotta plant your seeds, right? And God will breathe on it or he won't, based on his will. And if you can be at peace with that, you can go out and plant your seeds. That takes a little bit of work, because faith without works is dead.
Sometimes it takes a lot of bit of work.
Well, yes. But the thing is, you're not having faith in your work. You got to do that work. Right. But then God is going to make it grow or not. And if he doesn't, there's another reason. Right. And I mean, this is a whole other episode. We can talk about LA and why I moved here. But that's a big testimony for me. It is. Because I moved here for a whole other reason. But when I got here, and this was my wilderness, I grew so much in God, so much. And that was not my plan, So you think you're planting a certain seed, but God's doing something else. And that's where the peace comes from, So anyone who talks to me, I'll always go back to that, because that's the foundation. Those are the answers to me. One last thing I'll say, tell me, are we running out of time? Yeah. Because I don't want you coming off.
Finish your point.
Right. Finish this point about God is my brother, he studied astrophysics when my brother also is a Harvard grad. Shout out to Kyle. When he first got to Harvard, he was a total scientist nerd. And he knows I call him this direct to his face. It's fine. Total nerd, right? Astrophysics. And I don't know what year he was in, freshman, sophomore, whatever. There were certain questions in physics that did not have answers, right? It's like you get to the edge of the universe and you're left with, well, wait a minute. There's no formulas anymore. There's no this, there's no that. And he switched his major to, I think divinity. It was comparative religion at the time. Yeah, divinity. Because his brain was going somewhere deeper, right? And that I just remember that all the time, because there's so much that I've tried and continue to try to solve on my own. So many formulas. I want to try to figure out this balance between art and business and my life and all this. And really the answer is praying every day. And being fluid enough to know that I'm not going to have a big fat formula for my whole life. I've got to take it one day at a time. So that was the point. Yeah. I don't want to be cut off.
Good stuff, man. We will cut it, but we're going to stay there because actually that brings to mind what Pastor talks about a lot, which is, our instinct is to approach life from a chemistry perspective, whereas God's plan is much more about physics. Like you have to learn what works, and you have to surrender to the fact that this is the way it works. But if you keep trying to find a different chemical to get the same result as something else, you just spend your life trying to figure it out. Take the physics approach. We're going to talk about that. As a matter of fact, we're going to go into that in the very next segment because we're going to talk about that. So come back. Gumbolaya Podcast. I'm C.A. Purcell. This is my beautiful, wonderful, lovely wife, Kelley Nicole. We'll be right back.
If it's my time, then it's my time. Worry about yours, 'cause I got mine. 'Cause I got mine. Worry about yours, 'cause I got mine. 'Cause I got mine. Praise and production.